And good morning. I hope you are doing well. Today, I thought I would talk about automated testing in Business Central. This is a topic that I have kind of tried to study for months, many months. I don't think I'm up to a year yet, but certainly well over 6 months. And um, it is a bit intimidating at first because it's a very different world than what I'm used to. I should have done more automated testing in my .NET projects, but like many things, it just gets pushed to the side or pushed out of the budget. And so I was very interested in learning about it for Business Central. And it turns out it's a pretty critical skill set to have in the Business Central development world. And what's that? I'm sorry, I'm getting some breaking news here. One moment. The studio is telling me we have breaking news. Oh my gosh, and I have the wrong slide. See, I killed it. Terrible delivery, Steve. Okay, here's the breaking news. The breaking news is Steve creates his first Business Central AL test. I mean, this is cause for celebration. For me, certainly. Uh, you may not be as excited about it, but I was pretty pumped when on Friday night at 9:30 p.m. I was with the help of a colleague. And so a colleague and I do a Friday night study session. And so, 7:30 at night, Friday nights, we get on a Zoom meeting or whatever, and we're banging out code or trying to learn some topic. And last night, we finally bit the bullet and dove into automated testing with Business Central. And I'll talk more about this. So, this is what it looks like. And this screenshot represents real cause for celebration for me because you see that I created a custom code unit or custom project in AL called the lookup value UT customer or unit test customer. And it assigned a value to a custom field that was added to the customer table and page through page extension, table extension. And then the automated test validated that my test code or my extension, my customization worked. And so the first example here is showing success. And so everything worked as expected. And then we added a line to change the value mid-test so that the test would intentionally fail. And so we confirmed that we got an assert error and our test failed. So this was really incredible, a big, big achievement. So that is my breaking news on the BC channel here. So with that, what's going on in the background here? So it started, I think I bought this book in late 2019. And I thought it was a good idea. I didn't quite understand all the ramifications of automated testing in the Business Central world, but turns out if you're going to do Business Central development, I think you have to know this topic. If you're going to be a developer, if you're going to create customizations, if you're going to create an app for app source, if you're going to do it for anything even remotely serious, you really should look at automated testing for Business Central. It is, I think, an essential skill set. Now, this is the one and only definitive guide for automated testing in BC. My limited experience, it's kind of hard to find find other information with instructions and background and discussion of this topic. There are limited references to it. There's a section in MS Docs for BC that talks about it, but it's kind of brief, and it's not an entire class, let's put it that way. So there is this book. Now, this is the first edition currently available on Pact as of February 2021. And I think it was published in early 2019. Luke, the author, is trying to work on a second edition. He wants to, but it's up to the publisher to, agree to invest in that. So he's really working hard to get a second edition created and published. But right now, $5 for the ebook, buy it. Like, just even if you glance at it, refer to it, read the first few chapters just to understand it. Even if you're not technical, you're a functional consultant, you're a project manager, anyone dealing with BC, for $5, buy it for your team. It's well worth it, even if you're not writing the actual test code. The first several chapters, I think it's the first 4 chapters, talk about the background, the implementation, why you should be doing this, what is the mindset, the philosophy, and the approach of automated testing, and super, super critical aspect of Business Central development. So at the moment, I don't know if that's a temporary sale, but $5 for the ebook as of February 2021. Awesome deal. Just buy it. I have both the electronic version and the physical book, just for reference and highlighting and stuff like that. But great deal. Okay, so that is the basis for this conversation. Now, if you use the first edition book, or if you're starting to work with a test project, one thing that I ran into that had my colleague and I stumped for a few kind of sweaty brow minutes, I was a little nervous that I would have been just stuck in the mud, is that as of version, I think it's version 15 or higher, as of that transition from 14 to 15, there was a very key change that occurred. And I haven't found a blog post explaining it or announcing it, but it used to be that clear over there, you'll see test 14.0. In your app.json, you would just reference platform, application, and test to include the entire test framework, I suppose, all the test libraries in your project. And you'd state the version, the minimum version, and you'd be good to go. That no longer works. You can no longer add the word test in your app.json. That has been completely deprecated, and you'll get an error. And the error will, at least in my case, the error occurs in download symbols. Your download symbols will fail because download symbols will say it cannot find the test app. Okay, so now what apparently has happened is in version 15 and higher, they took what might have been a monolithic test app. I don't know what the structure was before, but now they are broken out into 33 different test libraries. And you have to list them as dependencies now, individual dependencies. And I don't know if I've ever used the dependencies section of app.json. Fortunately, my colleague thought of this, and we tried this and just lucked out, and it worked. So that happened to be the right solution. And it turns out there are one or two forum posts mentioning this, but I didn't think to dig for it. So this is a transition between old and new, just so you know. Okay, so what are these library dependencies? Well, there are a couple ways to find them. My colleague and I found them through extension management in my Docker container. So if you go to the extension management page, you just search for the word test, you will see these 33 extensions that are installed. And it looks, I don't know what it used to look like before. It was just one monolithic test, or if it was split out like this. But now, which kind of makes sense, it is split out into different extensions. So do you want to test cash flow? Do you want to test fixed assets? Do you want to test CRM? Then you only need to include the extensions that you need to test with as a dependency in your project. And I don't know if they're performance improvements or if that's more for just back-end design and refactoring and for them to just manage those tests and improve them without having to deal with a monolithic test library. But makes total sense. It's not too difficult. I'm not typically testing cost accounting plus general journal plus fixed assets and bank in the same my same customization. So I'm cool with that. And you can just click on the green installed link here to get the information about this. And what you'll specifically need, I think it's 4 parameters. You need the ID, which is that app ID at the bottom here. And it's called app ID here, but I believe in your dependency, it's going to be called ID. So you need 4 parameters per dependency: ID, name, publisher, and minimum version, I believe technically is what it is. So I'm able to list 17.0 here, even though the library is actually 17.4. So you need ID, name, publisher, and I've already forgotten. ID, name, publisher, and minimum version. Okay, so you can grab all of that from within extensions. Now, another place where this is mentioned, I've learned, thank you, Luke. Luke let me know that on February 6th, just a week ago, he created a blog post on the dynamicsuser.net site that lists all of these libraries. And so this happens to be, he's listing version 16.0 just for what he was working with at the time, but you can make it 17.0 if you're using SAS. This is just the minimum version he mentions. And he actually lists out the ID, the publisher, the name here. So if you need that list, it is available there, but you can also just search for test in the extensions management page and just find the ones you need. That's just as easy in case those change. So with that background discussion, let's do a little review. It won't be a full demo. I'm not going to go through all the code because there's an entire chapter in his book that walks you through this process. He has sample code, so I don't want to infringe on that or take away from the value of the book. But I'll just show you one of the end result of what this looks like. Okay, so let's go to Studio 4. Okay. So you see here, I have a code unit, and this is my test code unit, lookup value, unit test, customer. And this is the code unit that performs, in this case, just one unit test essentially. And the idea is that we have created a table extension, a customer table extension, a customer page extension, and added one custom field, and that is called lookup value. So now that we've done that, we are telling our test code unit, okay, create a lookup value code. Now, my environment, I have this I will have this extension. So here's my lookup value table with possible lookup values. Here's my customer table that adds my lookup value code, but that's it. It's just empty shells. I haven't manually entered any lookup values. I haven't populated any tables. I haven't assigned a lookup value to the customer. And that's the point. You don't want to do anything manually. You want to have your test code unit do this. So the first thing the test code unit does is it creates a lookup value code for me. And it's a random value. It doesn't really matter what it is. And so rather than me having to populate my lookup value table, my test code unit does that. So we create this lookup value code and store it in a variable. Next, we create a customer. We don't even bother using a Cronus or a sample customer record. Let's just assume the database is completely blank. This test code unit can create a customer. So we've created a lookup value in my custom lookup value table. We've created a customer. Now we're going to assign that new lookup value to the customer record in my customer table extension. One line, which is, it's a procedure or a function, but set lookup value on customer. So now after creating the code, creating the customer, I'm going to assign that lookup value to my test customer record. Then I'm going to verify that that assignment was successful. And that's it. So this is simplification, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4 lines to automate data creation, perform a test, and validate the test. Pretty amazing. And I'll just briefly show you what this looks like. So if we want to create a value in our custom table, a value code, that's called lookup value code, it's just a few lines. We use a utility to generate a random code, and we validate it, and we insert it. Create a customer, 1 line. This is part of the standard sales library. Just create a customer. From my world, this is amazing. This was always painful and tedious for me to do in the Dynamics GP world. I could launch the application and manually enter a test customer, or I could write dozens or 100 lines of code, build all the infrastructure to import a customer programmatically. But that would create it permanently in the database, and if I wanted to redo that, I'd have to go delete it or write code to delete it. It's a really tedious hassle that I did not enjoy. One of the worst parts of testing my applications was having to set up all the test records and configuration. That's what this does. Next, we set the lookup value on the customer. We've created a lookup value, created the customer, assign it. So we say, great. Let's validate that code and let's modify the customer. Last, we verify. So, is the lookup value code that we created the same value that got assigned to the customer? And you use assert are equal. Are those two values equal? If yes, we have a successful test. If the customer lookup value code field is blank, then something went wrong and we have a problem, right? So let's see what this looks like. I'm going to press Control F5 to publish without debugging. And I'm going to log in. And here is the test tool page in Business Central. And I'm going to get test code units. I want to select specific code units because there are quite a few potential test code units. And it's going through compiling that list. Okay, so you see there's a whole bunch of them. I just want mine, and this is my 50120 lookup value unit test customer. And it pulls in my code unit, and it pulls in the function, which is my test function. And so if I go up here, I have tagged this as test. And so that's how it knows, oh, okay, this is a test function. Great. So all I need to do, these are selected. I'm going to click on Run, Active Code Unit, and it runs the test. And here we see success. One button click. It's amazing. So now I'm going to cause this test to fail. So after I've created a lookup value code, after I've created a customer, after I've assigned that lookup value to the customer, I'm going to change the lookup value code to something else behind the scenes. So even though we have a lookup value code, it's been assigned to the customer, I'm going to change that variable to ABC123. So that should cause my test to fail. Okay, so now I'm going to do a new Control F5. Okay, same page. I'm going to click on Run again, Active Code Unit, and look at that. Assert are equal failed. Okay, and let's click on here. There we go. Scroll over. Let's see. Is it letting me hover? Yeah, so it's kind of cutting it off, but let's see. There we go. So, assert are equal failed, expected ABC123, because I kind of shoved that value in there. The actual was GU00000. That was the random value it created. So it's saying, hey, your test didn't pass. I expected to have this value saved in this field. It didn't match, so I'm going to let you know this failed. And this is just fantastic. So that was my second test run. And look at that. It tells you how long it took. Super cool. Now, the bigger picture is you put this test and say dozens of other tests of your Business Central extension into your application with code units and test code units and test runner code units, apparently. And you can call those tests from your Azure DevOps build pipeline. So when you have a new release or you have your nightly or weekly build of your application, Azure DevOps will build it. Azure DevOps will run your tests, and based on the results of your test, it will return success or failure and tell you which tests had a problem. And so you could be aware. Let's say that there's a breaking change in BC that you weren't aware of, or a small warning maybe. If one of your tests fails, you will know. You didn't have to manually test dozens of items every week in order to figure out that something changed in BC and that your code's going to break in 6 months. So this is really remarkable. It was a long time in coming for me to get to this point. But now the big hurdle is your first test, right? I was like frustrated, worried, and had never done one. Now that I've done one, it's like, oh, it's not that hard. And you just need to do it like anything else. Like bike riding seems impossible. It seems like levitating magic on a bike until you do it. And then magically you're like, oh, okay, I can just ride a bike now. Well, once you've written that code, you're like, oh, I kind of see how the pieces fit together now. I see some of the specifics and, oh, okay. Then you just need to figure out, okay, how does this apply to my code, my project, my application, whatever the case is. And you'll have to work through some of those things. But the concept is much clearer once you've done it. So get the book, get up to chapter 5 in Luke's book and do this. The code sample's available from GitHub, but I manually typed all of this in from the book just so I could get familiar with all the syntax and get more familiar with the coding process. It was super easy. So from scratch took us, I think, just under 2 hours, hour and a half, hour 45 minutes. We're done in 2 hours with a successful test. So in less than 2 hours with some focus and a few hiccups, I was able to learn this. So not bad at all. So let's see what we got here. So this is super duper awesome. Being able to create automated test fixtures, which is the fancy way apparently of saying test data. No manual entry of test records. So I'm still working on an old Dynamics GP project. I had to enter like 50 inventory items in order to test an integration. Super tedious, super painful. Every item requires like entry of 10 different things. It took me a couple hours just to get the test data in so that I could import a test file. Just no one wants to be doing that, right? There's no value in it. It's error prone. And, maybe I'm entering data that makes the test pass when I shouldn't be. It's really hard to say. So only once I can test in a production environment with real data will I really know. So the test fixtures allow you to define standard data sets that you're going to test against. Automated app testing. You're not manually testing features. You're not clicking buttons. You're not filling out fields. You're not assigning values to your custom fields and associating them with master records, for instance. This is obviously a massive time savings, plus just saving your sanity. You're not having to do this manually. It reduces errors and bugs. Anything you're doing manually, repeatedly, multiple people involved, you're going to have mistakes, you're going to miss things, you're going to have bugs, and it may not be thoroughly testing your code. So this way, at least you know what you are testing. And if you find a new bug that isn't covered by your tests, you just write another test. If you find a set of data that is getting past your test scenarios and is hitting a bug, you add a new test fixture to test for that bug. And so you just grow and grow and grow your data set, and then you can run it every day. You can run it thousands of times. The marginal cost just keeps dropping and dropping and dropping for your testing. And fundamentally, all of this allows you to prepare for Business Central updates and changes. So you can know in, say, December, January, February, that you will have to have a change for your code for the April release of Business Central or the October release of Business Central. You'll know up to 6 months in advance and have plenty of time because your automated test ran during your nightly DevOps build and it said, hey, I got these 3 errors. What's going on? And if you follow Waldo or Eric Hugard or a couple of other folks that are very active with AppSource and automated builds, if you follow them on Twitter, you'll see them say, hey, I'm getting this weird error. My build's failed. And then someone from Microsoft Dev Team or someone else say, yeah, it looks like they changed this in BC. And this wasn't really well documented, but it's a breaking change. So they'll discover the breaking change up to 6 months in advance, and they'll be able to modify their code to handle that breaking change. So really, really powerful solution here. Okay, so that was the breaking news and exciting celebration of creating my very first automated test in Business Central. And big thanks to Luke Van Vught. Not only does he have the book, but he does occasionally offer online classes on automated testing where he goes through the book, talks about the concepts. I think it was a 4 or 5 day class, half day session. So great value if you want to learn more about that. So with that, have a great day. Give automated testing a try. And if you're writing some BC code, if you're beginning, you don't need to get to it right away, but definitely have this on your to-do list because there's just no other way. It is an essential skill of, in my opinion, of Business Central development. So cheers. Have a good one.